am pleased to announce the return of the medium-sized square sketchbook from Sea White, and they are back indeed by popular demand. So if you've been waiting for one of these medium-sized, many-paged chunky sketchbooks, head over to the website where you can grab a hold of that. The pens that are being used in today's video, they will also be up on the stash shop, so if you would like to try these out, grab yourself a bargain really quickly. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and I was hoping to be feeling considerably better by this stage. I have been holding off putting out this video because I have been feeling unwell, and as you can hear, I'm not quite back to normal. However, I did want to give you this video, and I wanted to go back to the September Scrawlrbox and take on the Scrawler Challenge of Fascinating Folklore, simply because I wasn't firing on all cylinders, and you know, I've really not been that motivated to draw or art in general. So what I wanted to do here was just take the opportunity to play about with human anatomy, because it's something that I don't do very often, and keep in that comfort zone of having a graphite pencil, which most of you know is my favourite place to be. And when you're feeling ill, your comfort zone's the possibly the best thing that you can do. So there really wasn't much in terms of wow factor when it comes to the art in this video. It was just basically me attempting something to do with the prompt whilst feeling a bit sorry for myself. So to get on to the actual subject matter of the prompt, one thing I talked about in the unboxing from the folklore point of view is that I have a mixed heritage, in that I have Italian ancestors as well as Scottish ancestors. My dad is Italian. I was born here in Scotland though, and I do take quite a lot of physical characteristics from my father's side of the family. I'm dark hair, dark skin, etc, etc. Anyway, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to incorporate some sort of folklore from my Italian side and also from my Scottish side. So what I've done here is just basically played out two of those characters in inverted commas from the relevant folklore. I was never quite able to mesh them into a proper artwork just because I didn't have the beans for it. I was too busy trying to not be sick. So let's start with what I'm actually drawing here, and this relates to a Scottish tale. Not far from where I live is a castle called Glam's Castle, and it is pronounced Glams, not Glamis. And there are loads and loads of ghost stories surrounding Glam's Castle, and like tons of them, and they're all quite well known. This one in particular appeals to me because I've got this little bit of a fixation with sleeping and the lack of sleep. I've never slept well since my early 20s, so any ghost stories that relate to having anything to do with nightmares or sleeping, that's something that really appeals to me. So this is the story of Alexander Lindsay, and he was the 4th Earl of Crawford. I think the 4th Earl, I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, apparently he was in Glam's Castle, and he was basically just a horrible person. He had a terrible temper, and he used to torture his servants and all this kind of thing. So generally just not a very nice guy at all. And the story goes that he was drinking and gambling in one of the towers of Glam's Castle, and a servant came and knocked on the door and told him and his friends that they had to stop because it was you weren't supposed to gamble on the Sabbath, and this was a Saturday night. And basically the Earl ignored this and continued to play. He was also known as Earl Beardy to some people. I don't know whether that was an affectionate nickname or not, but in this picture I gave him a beard for that reason, and I don't really know where that came from, but it's just been noted in quite a few of the versions of the story that I've heard that he was called Earl Beardy. Anyway, so Beardy ended up playing cards well through the night into the Sabbath, and apparently at some point somebody joined their card game, and it was the devil himself. And because Earl Beardy was such a gambler, he ended up gambling away his soul. So the story goes now that he has been gambling eternally, trying to win back his soul from the devil ever since, and he can be heard in the tower screaming and shouting, when he's lost a hand or whatever. But there's also stories of him pacing up and down the corridors in his armor at night, and this is apparently to protect himself in case the devil's coming for him. That's why he's got his armor on, and that he leans over people while they're sleeping. And people have reported having stayed in Glams that they've felt a presence leaning over their beds, depending on what part of the castle they've been staying in. So in this picture here, you can see I've just put a silhouette of a body lying, which is supposed to be sleeping, and this is Errol Beardy leaning over them. Some rumours, I mean, you obviously all these stories and folklore, you take them with a pinch of salt, but some people say that the reason that he leans over is that he is jealous of people who are still alive, and he's got this fixation with watching them breathe while they sleep. I think that's more creepy than like playing cards with the devil. I don't know about you guys, but I'm firmly in the that is terrifying camp when it comes to that. There are so many good folklore and ghost stories. So if this is something that you really like, I would encourage you to look up Glam's Castle. Even if you just do a Google search for Glam's Castle ghost stories, there's loads of them, and they're all really entertaining, and they're kind of fun as well. But you can learn a little bit about the history of the castle as well. So that's why this guy has been included in the picture, and you can see I'm really kind of going to town with my 3B pencil because, as I say, it's a bit like a comfort thing for me. It's like a comfy pair of slippers, and when you're feeling a little bit under the weather, I didn't want to let you guys down and not put a video out, and I know this video is really late anyway. But it was just really nice for me to be able to just like scratch away with a graphite pencil and still, pull something out of the prompt, but also still use the supplies that came in the box as well. So on to the other character that you can see I'm working on now, and this relates to my Italian folklore side. And again, this is a story that changes depending on what part of Italy you're in. The most famous, I suppose, version is the Sardinian version, and this relates to the Domus de Janus, which is the houses of the fairies in Sardinia. And basically they're little tombs, and they're like miniature. They've got little miniature doorways, and the legend goes that they used to house fairies, and these fairies come in so many different forms and shapes and sizes, but the common thread amongst them is that they only come out at night. You never ever see them during the day. Sometimes they're referred to as witches, sometimes they're referred to as fairies. And these fairies would come out at night, and they had like almost translucent skin, and they used to go and steal yeast for their bread because they couldn't get their bread to rise. But there's also lots of connotations about them weaving garments out of gold and silver, and also helping people as well, or being a protector and watching out for people. And again, quite a lot of the stories have tales of these Janus looking over, particularly young women, and protecting young women. And this again because it happens at night. So I thought it was quite fitting that our little fairy friend here may well be in the same room as Errol Beardy, and maybe she's protecting the person that's sleeping from whatever horrible things that Errol Beardy might have in his head. If he has a fit of jealousy and it overcomes him, and he's trying to kill the person that's lying peacefully sleeping, maybe one of these Janus has come and she's there to be the protector. And so, yeah, this for me, obviously anatomy's not my thing here. And I wanted to have a sort of lighter cartoon feel to this character as a contrast to the sort of serious, darker image of Errol Beardy on that side. So I tried to spend a little bit of time working out proportions and things, and then deliberately skewing them a tiny little bit. So obviously you can see there that the waist circumference, that is not a realistic waist proportion to the rest of the picture. But when I think of fairies, I think of things like butterflies and, you know, that sort of really like nipped in insectoid kind of middle, and that's kind of what I wanted to go for. And if you were to lift her skirt up, the position, like the pose of her legs, would actually be that she is bringing her right knee up towards her elbow, but her foot's pointed because she's kind of flying through the air, and her left leg is trailing behind her and it's straight. Kind of think of like a Powerpuff Girls pose, you know, when they're mid-air. I'm sure some of you will be able to relate to that. So in my initial sketches, I actually drew that out. So in my mind, although those legs aren't visible in this picture, mentally I drew those and then just put the skirt over the top of them, if that makes sense. And that's something that's really important because my anatomy, my human anatomy, is not good. So it was a really important step. An interesting point to note here as well, I really struggled with this eraser. For initial sketch lines, this eraser's great, and I ranted and raved about it in the unboxing. See, for trying to erase fine details like the facial features, it was really clumsy and I really struggled with it, and all I wanted was my needed eraser back. And it didn't erase quite as cleanly as I would have liked. There was a lot of like smudgy marks left behind. So I think that's probably the only thing my opinions changed on in terms of the supplies, you know, actually putting them to use, was that the eraser's just a bit too cumbersome. Also with the fact that this was a 3B pencil that we were working with, it's not an ideal sketching pencil because it's dark and soft and you are going to get those dirty lines. So I think we would have got on better at that sketching stage or to fix mistakes if we'd had a different pencil, which obviously that's just one of those things. It's nice to have a 3B pencil, I'm not complaining, but it threw up other hurdles just because of the combination of the supplies we had. So I was quite determined as well. I wanted to use these markers in all the possible incarnations. So obviously I've deliberately kept the hair and the plume shape on Errol Beardy's helmet. I've used the same shape to try and tie these two images together. And I have used the markers in a watered down form here with a paintbrush, as well as using the fine liner and the brush tip to create that movement in the hair. Just because I really wanted to say I'd used the fine liner tip as well as the brush tip. And I really like these. They did what I needed them to do, and I imagine there'll be many of you out there that would do a much more adventurous and better job with these markers than I did. But it was really fun just to play about with them and, you know, use them in different formats just to see what they could do. So I did go with some finishing touches, and I say really I thought about ways after the fact of tying this together better as a picture, but I just really took enjoyment out of messing about with anatomy and human features, obviously more so with the Janice than with Errol Beardy. But that was a really good little exercise for me, and there was no fear of retribution either. But something I did learn about my drawing abilities while I was doing this is that I do actually know the rules of anatomy. I just can't really be bothered adhering to them most of the time. So I suppose I can say that I'm a lazy anatomist. Anatomist, is that the right word? Yeah, so I can do it, I just choose not to, and I can't be bothered with it because sticking to rules is boring. So I think I got a little bit more enjoyment out of this because I knew I could play about with things like the volume in her hair and the size of her waist and how long her arms were compared to her, you know, like all these kind of things. Does it make me want to draw more bodies? No, not really. Just being honest. And I got a lot more pleasure out of working away with the graphite pencil on Errol Beardy's helmet and his actual beard as well. Like, that was really good fun compared to working on our little fairy. I do think our fairy should still have had wings. I was going back and forth on that the whole time because there's no mention of wings in any of the stories that I read, so I decided to leave them out. But I think that their wings could maybe be made of the same stuff that, you know, they make the gold and silver garments out of. I don't know. Again, no metallic stuff, so I decided just not to push that too hard or pursue it too much. The fact that I've created 3 human figures in one drawing is unprecedented for me. And although it was, just very loose and relaxed and, we weren't creating any masterpieces, that is a lot of faces for me. I would like to say I've learned a lot from it, but yeah, no, not really. Not really. I just decided as well that there needed to be some sort of background, so that's literally the dark sepia, just really, really watered down. The white of the paper was kind of bugging me a little bit, and it's not something that normally bothers me. So I just decided to chuck a couple of layers of that down, and I'm really pleased to say as well that this cartridge paper, I really like this paper. This is the Frisk cartridge paper that came in the box, and I used water quite a few times, and especially with the hair and the helmet plume, it was more than one layer of watered down marker, and it took the water really, really well, considering that's not its primary purpose. And I really enjoyed the texture of the graphite pencil on this paper, and that's always a big thing for me. And you can see the texture there that I've managed to get with Errol Beardy. Especially in the back part, which I didn't want there to be any detail. I wanted his helmet to be as detailed as possible. But I've managed to get some really nice texture in his beard as well without having to spend hours and hours on it. And the texture of the paper really helped with that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this paper. I like it very much. I use cartridge paper a lot just because I do like to draw it in pencil. So I would highly recommend this paper if you're looking for something that's affordable, that's going to give you that little bit of texture so you can be a pencil monster just like me. So just kind of going back here and adding more in, I probably could have spent a lot more time on these individual characters. I could even have done one per A5 sheet and really spent a lot of time on them. It's not something I feel inclined to go back and expand on, and there's a lot of things that I do in these challenges that I do like to do that with, but this is not one of them. But I'm really glad that, despite not feeling well, I've stepped outside my comfort zone. I really enjoyed learning about the ghost stories, in particular about Glam's Castle. So I highly recommend that you check them out. And just overall had a bit of fun with this whilst not feeling particularly fabulous. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. I hope you've learned something. I want to thank you very much for watching. Thanks for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate it. And I will see you back in the cave on Sunday, hopefully a little bit less congested, for another video. So have a great day, everyone, and bye for now.